Are you scared of non-metallic metal? Good, me too. Non-metallic metal. Painting without the metallics. Superior old gamer silver. You are not getting a look in today. We're going to do this the hard way, the scary way. And luckily, even though I am not some incredible award-winning NMM aficionado, I am close enough to my journey that I've written down all the stuff that I know is important. And we're going to cover the things that I thought were important that aren't, and the stuff that I didn't know was important that was. And the brilliant news for you is that is all going to make it easier. By the end of this tutorial, you're going to be a better highlighter in general. We're going to just paint this piece. It's a nice helpful one. I suggest you pick a helpful one too. Don't do an entire model, that would be insane. And I'm going to use my teachers and beginners knowledge to make this as approachable as possible so you can give it the best possible go that you have ever done at non-metallic metal. Maybe you'll surprise yourself. Okay, let's go. Goodbye notes, and hello Orc Hulk. He says it's going to be fine. We're going to take him off when he'll probably fall apart because I didn't glue him yet. There we go. And we're going to get this one simple-ish piece on a holder. I'm going to spray this silver and we're going to come back and have a little talk about this. You can observe some stuff. We will observe some stuff together, and then we're going to start taking some reference photos. We'll use those and it's going to make everything better. Very often on this channel, I talk about taking a reference photo or a video, and then you can pause it at the right point if you want to have an option of lots of different angles. Basically what I'm talking about there is just moving your light around, moving your piece around, and then snapping a photo at whatever point you think it looks cool, or it suggests the lighting that you're imagining your model or piece in. So if I'm imagining the sun is here, I could have it lighter here. There we go. It's really easy to do this when the piece is black. You'll get black and white information, literally. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to spray the silver, and we're going to observe any differences that we had when we turned it silver. Okay, here we go. Like, already you're going to be able to pick on some of the stuff that I'm going to be talking about in this. Metallics have pretty extreme edge highlights. You can see we've got some practically black going on here. Camera's struggling with it a bit. It's not pure black, but it's really dark, even though it's a very bright silver all over. I didn't put more silver here and less here. It's the same amount of silver all over. White appears in NMM, so anyone saying like, you should never use white, we'll probably end up using white. Anything round or spherical or like this kind of cone shape here, you're going to get really extreme stuff at the lit bit and really extreme stuff at the not lit bit. And obviously angle makes a huge difference. Now, if you're in a dark room, you're going to get one point of light that's really extreme, and then it's going to be quite dark elsewhere. If you are in a lighter room or a light environment, give me a moment. All right, we're in a lighter environment. Now, watch the bottom of the shield. What's that? That's my finger reflected. My finger is going to be reflected more obviously in the dark parts than it is in the light parts. There's more room for my light finger to affect those. More on kind of reflections and stuff later, but my main note in terms of environments, don't worry, I'm not going to overload you, is that if you're using reference photos from a museum, you could take them and you could put them in the bin. Unless your model is standing in a white box, your reference photos from something in a white box are going to be relatively useless. So what I would recommend is you take your reference photos wherever you are, and then you pick an ideal thing to copy, and you just copy those colors. If my darker shadows look sterile here without my finger there, and I've got a picture of a helmet in a field and they're kind of like a very, very dark desaturated green, we'll use that if they are. You take your two photos, have a think, you could even take some notes and compare them. Use the right colors in the right places. You do not have to paint well. I really, really want to try and drive that home. The right stuff being roughly in the right place is super important. You can go really light and really dark too. You can see this on this shield. That line looks practically black. This looks practically white. Part of that is my camera struggling, but in real life, it's not that much different. So take your reference photos, play with angles, and then compare to real life reference photos, and you will have a plan. You can also use a reference video. Okay, so if you don't know what the plan is yet, just slowly turn this around. Editor Ian, please pause at one point. Please show us like the lightest, second lightest, middle tone, second darkest, and darkest tone at whatever point you've paused it at. Thank you very much. Any extreme shape's going to have extreme stuff. And yeah, aren't reflections cool? Just as a show of like how much the outside environment does affect shiny, shiny things. We had a Mephisto red accident. Right, my shield turned red, my shield turned green. Right, it makes a really big difference. My shield turned turquoise. Light is also now bouncing off this. Please do arrows, Ian. From my light to my cloak, to my piece, to my eyes. And we can see exactly where that is. This dot here is telling me where my imagined light is. Okay, so I hear you, you're worried about picking your colors. You don't want to do the combined thing. Don't worry, some manufacturers make paint sets and some lovely people on the internet will have recipes for their NMM in exactly the paints they used. I would try and use exactly the paints people are using. If an expert has selected a selection of paints, they've probably made some decisions for you that you don't have to even think about, like using ones with good coverage where necessary at the end, or like softer ones at the beginning, stuff like that. Try and get the exact paints they're using. You can just use their recipe and off you go. And then all you have to do is worry about getting the right amount of paint roughly in the right place, roughly. We're going to start with one section, reference photo hopefully appearing now, and we're going to just do a little bite size first attempt. White's going down first where we want it to be lightest, just to practice. Okay, so take any white, doesn't really matter which any white you pick. What's really important is that you don't put thick paint on your model at this stage, because we're going to end up painting over this and we don't want to start things off in the wrong manner. And then just have a look at your reference photo and try and put things where they were roughly. So what we had was this little bottom bit here. I'm going to end my strokes towards the bottom so it ends up brighter, but again, it doesn't matter if it's not super neat. There we go. This little chip here was lighter at the bottom. There we go. This edge was definitely really reflecting here. Should probably remove a bit of paint off my brush actually. And then what we had is, I've got to get in close to this one a little bit harder with a bit of a gap. This section was kind of lighter there. And then towards the top, so I'll end my strokes again where I want it the brightest. Brightest there, and then you can catch edges because some of these edges were definitely a little bit lighter. Tilt your model around to get it right. There we go. We kind of just made like a cartoony version, a very simple version. That is how easy the starting point is. Just don't have too much paint on your brush. Make sure it's dilute enough and is leaving happily. If your brush is like way too wet or way too saturated, that is bad. You're not trying to glaze anything here or be delicate. Really, you just don't want too much paint on it. And then give yourself a first guideline. Okay, next step, we've used Dawnstone from Citadel. So here on my palette. It is fairly diluted. It's not a hugely strong paint anyway. Take off a little bit so we're not oversaturating or flooding. And then we're going to paint the entirety of our area. Now, a couple of words on how you do this in terms of what bit's dark, what's light, what order you work in. It doesn't hugely matter, and you can do whatever you're comfortable with. So what I'm doing here is I'm basically going to cover the entire thing. I'll do it a couple of times. And if you obscure those whites, do not worry about it. You can put them back in. Part of the reason we did them is not because they are 100% necessary, but because we gave ourselves a little learning experience. So we've kind of done a practice go, okay? If anything, I was too dilute with my my grey, so maybe I could have just done it thicker and done it one less time, but build it up either way. You don't have to worry about stuff too much. Okay, so now it's just a matter of taking a lighter color or adding a little bit of white. And then those areas that we highlighted that hopefully we've remembered where they are. Ending our strokes where we want it lightest, we're gonna put those back where they were. So this is literally like, we have done this already. It is not new territory. If something ends up looking like a bit harsh, you can just make your brush wetter. Exactly the same brush you had, make it wetter and softer. Take a load of it off. And then what you've done, you just go over it to soften up that transition a little. Again, we're not aiming for perfection at all. While I'm adding white to my mix, you could be using, pre-done colors if you find that easier. There's literal paint sets for this that tend to have an odd number of paints, so one's in the middle, or they'll have like a sequence of 5 and 3 extras or something like that if it's an 8 set. We are just highlighting normally now, so a smaller area of what we just did. And again, if you go thick, you can just like fuzz into it a bit. Like I said, there's no right or wrong order to do this in. What I'm going to do is get a little bit of black and put in a tiny bit of my grey. And it's quite wet. Now you really, really want to make sure here that there's not too much on the brush. It's diluted, you can see how thin it is there. I'm just going to go and go and go patiently until I feel like that brush is really going to be easy to control. I'll do a test on my thumb. Looks about good to me. And we're going to push and we're going to end it where we want stuff darkest from our observations. Now, we do have an underside here. Do not try and get it at an angle that you are not good or is not good for whatever handed you are. Turn your piece around. This is why I'm using an egg. Okay, and then you get that stuff from whatever angle you can be the most steady at, the most reliably, especially if it risks kind of slipping onto a highlight on the other side of an edge or something like that. Cool. The moment you add this in and the next stage, stuff starts making sense. Whoa, horsey. What's this? Okay, we spoke about other colors being involved. A non-scary way to do them is using washes. We spoke about them being desaturated. This is going to kind of handle that for us. You can use normal paint if you want, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to repeat this over the steps that I just did, the black step. I live in Manchester. There are always protests, so if you hear fanatical chanting outside, I don't know quite what they're protesting against, but it's very loud. All right, getting scary. So we're going to be very willing to get the right and steady angle for this section. We're going to drop right down. I was using 3. We're using a 00 at this point. It has a tiny head. Very big difference between these two brushes here. Both very pointy, but this one's going to flood and oversaturate more easily than this one. This one's going to dry out faster. Swings and roundabouts. We are using ivory for our highlights, and it is scary. So we're going to put a little bit on, and we're just going to be super careful with not going too far with this. Take a couple of goes. It's worth getting it right. If you're worried, you can just mix it with your grey, and that'll make those steps gentler, or you can dilute it more. All that type of stuff. Push it towards where you want the most. If you do put too much on, you can just glaze a little bit of grey over it. Just dilute your grey, really watery, and run it over it a couple of times. All bits like the bottom of this chip are going to be very important. Hold your breath. And they might not go perfectly, but just try and get them good enough. Oh, that's a bit fat. Okay, I reckon we are pretty good there. Don't know if Ian can pop up the reference photo, but I'll double check it and I'll try and put some dots where it's relevant. But aside from this middle section, which still kind of sells as very shiny, we're good. It's not as scary as you think. Rather than just saying you can do this, show you how to fix things that have gone wrong. Bit of the dawnstone. Name here is for it to be really wet. Nail check as normal, very, very wet. And then we're just gonna gently pull it over those ivory sections and it will pull it back closer to the previous color. That's it. Simple. You can use this to soften up transitions if you want. It is that easy. You do not need to worry about it. It's okay. You wanna try and sell stuff with some very light dots or even some white dots. We're not going to shy away from the existence of really bright stuff because it's useful. That's cool. It's exactly like the last step. Just be super careful. Make sure you don't have too much on your brush. Steady hands, brace, angle, all that stuff. And if you think that you've done an okay job already, not perfect, because everyone think it's perfect, and I'd suggest that you're probably fine and you don't need to risk it. Small brushes do dry out faster. It is the sacrifice of using them. So don't muck around with it. Once it's set up, you've done your tests, thin, precise, dab, 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 pause, hold breath, go. Cool. You might notice the very minimal approach we've taken on the underside of the spear. That's because we're trying to be efficient. I'm going to put my effort where it counts the most, and generally okay here. It's fine. We might learn something about what is and isn't necessary as well by kind of taking a minimal approach on areas where we can get away with it. All right, you are ready. Number one, if you're trying this out, pick a simple piece that is fairly detailed and like not massive, not big and flat, or like a huge smooth helmet or something like that where you've got to paint the sky and the castle. Pick something small, like a pauldron, something with rivets on that's helpful, or even just one shoulder pad, a spearhead like we have. Give it a go, give yourself 5 to 15 minutes on it, no more. Think how it went, take some notes, turn it around if it's a spearhead and it's got another side, or do another one and try again. Do it 3 times and see how you feel at the end of it. Please, if any of you do try that, let me know how it went, because I think you'll surprise yourself by number 3, basically. Number 2 might go completely wrong. I've been there plenty of times. You think you've understood it and you haven't. I wanted to address one really good question as well that we had from Bing Bollard. Why non-metallic metal if true metallic metal can look so good and it's easier? Well, doing true metallic metal will teach you how to do non-metallic metal better. So considering where your highlights are and stuff like that, being willing to tint your metallics or put a shade over them, which is something we've done tons, making your recesses darker and your rivets brighter, all that stuff is relevant to all metallics, whether they're true metallic metals or non-metallic metals. So that's something to bear in mind. Let's have a quick look at some examples. What I want you to do here is tell me what color is at each of those points. Let us know if you were close on this, by the way, because I found it really hard. These are the actual colors according to Photoshop that are there. So all of them are probably slightly more dull than you were thinking. The brightest green we could find on it was in fact like kind of drab. So this is just a little note that all of your colors, however reflective your surface is, the more reflective they'll be brighter, less reflective they'll be darker, or they won't even be there at all. They're still going to be less bright than they would be on the surrounding area. Like check out the trees next to this guy. Next helmet, you can literally see a castle reflected in this. That's half the reason we're sharing it. Let's do the same exercise again. Pick those colors and see what colors from Games Workshop range you think are going to be in this helmet. Still pretty desaturated, so have a think about that and try and practice painting what you actually see rather than what you think you see. It'll make a huge difference. That's one of the hardest things. Be forgiving on yourself as well, guys. Do check out some of the references that we've made to our other content throughout this video. There's a lot of it on brush control, brush loading, stuff like that, and it's really going to help you with these finer points while you're practicing a skill that is helped out by improving your brush control generally, like non-metallic metal is. It's a bit like cloaks in that sense. Okay, any questions you've got, pop them down below. Any suggestions for something else you'd like to see us tackle, let us know. And if you'd like to see a follow-up to this, like one that covers copper or something like that, or you want to see me try more complicated, larger shapes, I mean, I can give it a go. We can go there together. Thank you very much for watching the video. Please like, please comment, please subscribe, and check out the link below for eggs, which are available now to help you with all of your brush control and model holding needs.